Russian propaganda actively shapes the image of China as a steadfast and dependable ally, so I am emphasizing exceptionally harmonious relations and mutually beneficial cooperation. Russian media frequently showcase detailed reports about joint economic projects, military exercises, and strategic political agreements, effectively creating a persistent illusion of friendship and a cloudless partnership between the countries. However, the real history of relations between Russia and China is full of tension and conflicts. From protracted border conflicts in the 17th to 19th centuries, to ideological disagreements and significant armed military clashes in the 20th century. Relations between Russia and China have always been exceptionally complicated and notably tense. The current situation, this apparent alliance, is by no means a guaranteed given. But why does modern Russian propaganda create the myth of eternal friendship with China, carefully concealing the numerous historical and current contradictions? Let's figure it out. But first, I have an important request for you. Subscribe to this channel and click the bell to get notifications about new videos. Like and comment. Support our work on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. Most importantly, send donations to the armed forces of Ukraine. So, let's begin. The myth of traditionally friendly relations between Russia and China ignores a centuries-old history of conflict and rivalry. During the 17th century, two rival empires started to clash violently over the vast stretches of territories that each sought to control. Russia was eager to push eastward, dreaming of expanding its territories. At the same time, Qing China was also seeking to strengthen its position in the region. This significant and ongoing conflict of strategic interests led to a series of violent military clashes, culminating in the War of 1685 to 1686. Russia aimed to secure its permanent presence on the Amur River, while China tried to completely expel the Russian forces from this disputed territory. The war finally ended with the formal negotiation and signing of the Treaty of Nerchinsk in 1689. This was the first formal agreement between the two countries. It established borders and regulated international trade. However, the treaty was ambiguous and did not resolve all disputed issues. The borders remained undefined, and both sides continued to claim the same territories, which laid the groundwork for future conflicts. In the 19th century, Russia significantly intensified its expansion in the Far East. At that time, China was experiencing a period of internal turmoil and external pressure, which made it vulnerable to the aggressive policies of its neighbors. As was its usual practice, Russia took advantage of the country's weakness and began actively annexing Chinese territories in the region. As a result of Russia's aggressive actions, the Chinese were forced to make concessions. The Treaty of Aigun in 1858 and the Treaty of Peking in 1860 furthermore secured vast, significant territories for Russia, including the expansive Primorye and the entire Amur region. These treaties were signed under pressure and in the context of China's weakened state after defeats in the Opium Wars and internal uprisings. As a result, China lost significant territories, which caused deep dissatisfaction and a sense of injustice. These border conflicts left a deep mark on relations between Russia and China. Despite formal diplomatic agreements, mistrust and deep-seated mutual grievances persisted. Russia and China saw each other as significant potential rivals, which further complicated their diplomatic and economic relations. After the 1917 revolution and the creation of the USSR, relations between Russia and China remained complex and contradictory. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Russian Empire supported various Chinese revolutionary movements in an effort to expand its influence. However, after the Bolsheviks came to power, priorities changed. In 1949, after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, PRC, the Soviet Union actively supported Mao Zedong's new government. This was a time of hope and ambition when the two largest communist powers in the world sought to create a strong alliance. The Soviet Union provided significant economic and military aid to China, helping to rebuild its war-torn economy and modernize its army. Soviet engineers and specialists worked in Chinese factories, Joint enterprises were established, and Chinese students studied at Soviet universities. The alliance between the two communist powers seemed strong and promising. However, in the 1960s, relations began to deteriorate rapidly. Ideological differences between the communist parties of the USSR and China became the cause of serious disagreements. Mao Zedong criticized the Soviet leadership for revisionism and for abandoning true communist ideals. Khrushchev in turn condemned Maoist experiments such as the Great Leap Forward. These led to mass famine and the deaths of millions of Chinese people. These ideological differences became the cause of open hostility and led to a break in diplomatic relations. The culmination of the tension was the border military conflicts on the Ussuri River in 1969. The most well-known incident occurred on Damansky Island, or Zhenbao as it is called in Chinese, when armed clashes between Soviet and Chinese border guards led to the deaths of hundreds of soldiers on both sides. These conflicts revealed the depth of distrust and hostility between the two countries. Throughout several tense months, the situation remained on the very brink of full-scale war, and only extensive diplomatic efforts and international pressure helped to prevent a further escalation of the conflict. The border conflicts and ideological disagreements left a deep and lasting mark on the relationship between the USSR and China. Despite some temporary improvements during the 1980s, trust between the two countries was never truly restored to its former state. Today, relations between Russia and China are based on pragmatism and mutual benefit. Both countries seek to strengthen their positions on the international stage through cooperation in various fields. However, this cooperation does not rule out distrust and hidden competition. Russia and China use each other to achieve their strategic goals, but their relationship is far from an idealized friendship. In order to win the favor of the Celestial Empire, Russia, in the early 2000s, even had to make significant territorial concessions to China, which led to a weakening of Russia's position. This refers to the transfer to the Chinese of Tarabarov Island and part of Bolshoi Ussuriysky Island. As a result, China received a number of Russian territories with a total area of as much as 337 square kilometers. This is one of the prices Russians pay for the so-called friendship with China. And despite the economic cooperation between the countries, which is more beneficial to Russia, China is actively expanding its influence in Central Asia, which is causing concern in the Kremlin, as it has traditionally considered this region its own sphere of influence. In addition, China is striving to diversify its sources of energy resources. This could weaken its cooperation with Russia in this area. Both states regularly conduct naval and land military exercises, demonstrating their readiness to act together if necessary. However, despite the appearance of partnership, Russia is closely monitoring the growth of China's military power and its ambitions in the region. Both states seek to avoid direct confrontation, but their military cooperation is pragmatic in nature and based on necessity rather than trust. On the international stage, Russia and China often act as allies, defending their interests at the UN and other international organizations. They proclaim their steadfast opposition to Western dominance and actively work and strive to create their own multipolar world. However, political cooperation also has its inherent limitations and challenges, since China consistently pursues its own goals and is not always willing to make compromises with Russia. Internal domestic political interests and long-term strategic priorities may differ, which inevitably results in periodic disagreements. The history of relations between Russia and China is full of conflicts and rivalry, which contrasts with propagandist claims of their centuries-old friendship. Understanding these historical realities helps to better assess the current relationship between the two countries and avoid naive notions of a friendly history. Modern relations between Russia and China are based on pragmatism and situational benefit, but do not rule out mistrust and hidden competition. These relations are characterized by a complex dynamic in which mutual benefit is combined with competition and strategic calculations. Both nations persist in utilizing one another strategically to reach their specific goals, but their partnership remains very conditional and fragile. And even now it is obvious to the naked eye that there is a clear imbalance in this so-called cooperation between the two countries. And it's only getting more pronounced. Russia is beginning to resemble a militarized colony of China,